All right, before I introduce myself, I want you to, for a moment, imagine the best team you could ever be on. So that's everything from creating ideas to getting things into the hands of your users. You've got all the knowledge, experience, and access to stuff you need to get things done. You collaborate towards shared outcomes and goals. You have a collective responsibility for what you're building. You get to input and collaborate on product decisions and prioritization. You have time to be creative. You have great working relationships inside your team and outside your team. You get to see users interacting with your work, and you get to iterate based on what you learn. And you get to learn new skills and try things out regularly. You're a happy, well-oiled machine. Now, who is this true for? Oh dear, usually one or two put their hands up. All right, so now I'm going to bring us back to earth with reality. So my name is Emily Weber, hello. I am an organizational consultant. I try and help organizations create the environment where people can thrive so that organizations can thrive. And I've been independent for about 9 years, and I've worked with different organizations, public sector, private sector, different sizes. And there's some things that I've seen recently, and these have been playing on my mind, so I brought them together into this talk. And this talk is called Why Can't We All Just Get Along? So why not? So I've noticed this increasingly worrying trend in the industry about specialisms at the expense of collaboration, shared responsibility, and valuable outcomes. This real kind of focus on specialism might be to do with organizational structures. It could be changing workforces or uncertainty in the world. But this trend creates silos. Silos between departments, across departments, and even in teams themselves. And these silos means all the value that you get from people working together and collaborating gets lost. People get pigeonholed, and we lose focus on creating valuable outcomes for our users. So I'm going to explore this trend in this talk. So this talk is in threes. And I went a bit overboard on the animations. I was having some fun the other day, so I don't know, see if you enjoy them. So the first thing I wanted to do was call out 3 anti-patterns. So an anti-pattern is kind of like a pattern, but instead of solution, it gives something that superficially looks like a solution but isn't one. So it's kind of like the opposite of best practice, but you start to see it repeated. Anti-pattern 1 is one role across many teams. So imagine, if you will, this is a team, all different roles, different disciplines, working together daily, working together closely towards a shared outcome. Now, this person here, this is Anita. She is a designer, and she's as much a part of the team as everyone else on the team. Great. A new project comes along, and this is a really important project. We really need to do this. We've got this really great client, but we have a gap. We don't have a designer on the team. So they say to Anita, would you mind working on 2 teams? And Anita thinks, I'm not super busy at the moment. I could probably help out. All right, I'll do that. So her time gets split between the 2 teams. Now she's on 2 teams. She has to skip some of the stand-ups because they're at the same time. She can't be in all the planning sessions. She starts to feel like she's playing catch-up. And she feels like the quality of her work is slipping. And she's being more reactive. She doesn't know why decisions have been made. What happens next? A 3rd team comes along, and the organization's been trying really hard to hire a new designer, but they can't. So they say, Anita, we really need you to work on this other thing because it's really important. Will you do it? And she kind of feels like she has to. She feels like she's pressured into it. So her time gets split again, and now she's on 3 teams. And she's got no time and headspace to dedicate any time to thinking. She can't be in the planning and review sessions. Her work is guided by what other people put on the backlog and put her name against. She's being seen as a blocker, so she starts to feel dissatisfied and demotivated. Now, I've seen this in quite a few organizations. Anyone see this in theirs? Usually a designer or QAs in this position. And not only that, context switching isn't really factored in. It's not just her time split in 3. There's all this extra time spent moving between these projects. Okay, anti-pattern 2 is product versus engineering wars. So this is where an organization has split itself into 2 areas: product, which includes things like design, user research, BAs maybe, and engineering, which could be also include things like data operations, QA, and creating these two different cultures around them. What this can look like is this: making the decisions on one side, throwing them over the wall to building the product on the other side. And people get frustrated on both sides. Does anyone recognize this? Yeah. Engineering doesn't get involved in the creative decision-making. Iterations are really slow, delivery is slow, and we put these other things around them to create these extra cultures around them. So the rise of product ops, the rise of engineering managers can lead to creating these massive silos in the organization. There's a blog post by Rick Kick and Kennedy Collins that illustrates this in this. You've got these two silos between product and technology, with chief product officer and chief technology officer at the top. And this silos kind of carries on all the way down, and then somewhere at the bottom, people are expected to work together. But what tends to happen is they align themselves with their management structure instead of their cross-functional team. And it starts to get a bit us and them. Excuse me. Anti-pattern 3 is X-led organizations. So this is where an organization says it is something led. So it might be data-led, product-led, delivery-led. I mean, most of us are hippo-led, to be fair. And in theory, it might mean that an organization has decided to focus heavily on an area because it's missed it out before. But in practice, it can lead to becoming really literal and dictating who holds all the power, how decisions get made, and who gets left out in the cold. So it can lead to everything being too heavily influenced by one view, rather than benefiting from a rounded set of experiences and ideas. So I did a little bit of research, reading up on what people say. People say, engineering-led. The priorities in an engineering-led company are solving technology challenges and achieving innovation breakthroughs, because that's the only way you can do it, by being engineering-led. Now, I've worked with very engineering-led organizations. I've worked with organizations that don't have product managers even. And what that can look like is, if it goes too far the wrong way, it can look like spikes that last a year, or code being put out without knowing why you're doing it or what it is you're expecting to change. And that kind of moving fast and breaking things can break your product, it can break your users, and it can break your teams. So product-led organizations, well, they represent the future of business in a digital-first world. So unlike product-led organizations, I hear a lot. A lot of us make products, so being product-led maybe makes sense. But what it can translate into, and I've seen this in quite a few organizations, is being product management-led rather than product-led. And so that's a problem. All right. So the problem is, if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Right, so 3 symptoms of these anti-patterns. The first one is that one group holds the power. So in the first anti-pattern, the designer doesn't have any power because they can't be any of the decisions. In the second anti-pattern, product versus engineering, they're always arguing over who holds the power. And in the third anti-pattern, X holds the power. They also reinforce professional protectionism. Now, professional protectionism is a term I borrowed from healthcare, and it's where people kind of protect the boundaries of their discipline or their role at the expense of collaboration. When I read about this, I really recognized this behavior. And so an example they give is that if a doctor regards a particular medical test as a core part of their professional role, then letting someone else do it can feel like a loss of status, authority, responsibility, or experience. And particularly if it's linked to their sense of identity or reward structures. So if an individual has an overly rigid professional identity, it can lead to poor team working, resistance to change, and even bullying. Now, the third problem is that they can cause in-team silos. So in-team silos, a team might look like a team, but actually work is being handed off between roles, like this. So there's like little mini walls that stuff's being thrown over. Now, you've got these when you see maybe your Jira board has roles on it. Or you may have teams that have way too many people in them because there has to be someone in every single role in that team. One person I was talking to was saying that they're a team they're making a 2-page static website and their team had 14 people on it. Not good. And we need people to work together because we're solving wicked problems. And wicked problems are ones that don't just have one solution. So what this is 𝒕𝒊𝒌𝒆, he talks about, he says when people work together under the right circumstances, group models are much better than individual models. Now he has a website called Draw Toast, where he gets people to draw how they make toast to show how our different mental models are so different. And I picked these 4 out as particularly interesting because just going to go through them. So this is just people like, how do you make toast? The first one is really kind of process-based. It's even got numbers against it. So someone who thinks in a really process-based way. The second one is kind of more kind of zoomed out on systems. So the person who drew this is thinking about, how do we grow the wheat? How do we make the bread? How do we make the toast? The third one is like super user-focused. There's a user in every single step here, and they look so happy about getting their toast. Who's that happy making toast? Actually, my husband. He loves toast. And the fourth one is from somebody who's used to making toast in a frying pan. So a completely different mental model of how to make toast. I always think about this, if you'd asked me, I make toast in a toaster now, but if you'd asked me in the 80s, it would have been an eye-level grill. So my mental model has changed. Anyone that grew up in the 80s is agreeing. My mental model has changed myself. So having all these different ways of thinking about the world, it's only when we bring them together can we create these unified mental models. And that's why we need these different roles working together. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about some collaboration anti-patterns. Many of you have seen these anti-patterns as well yourself. I've talked about some of the problems with them, so I'm going to continue my theme of three approaches that might help to counteract them. So the first one is to create enabling structures. So an organizational structure won't solve all your problems, but it can definitely make them worse. Same with if incentivization can reward bad behavior and can kind of double down on it. So the first one for organizational structures is to create one team at all levels. So this is again back to that article I talked about earlier from Rick Kick and Kennedy Collins. This idea of moving to a model where you have aligned teams at all levels. So sharing responsibility and accountability horizontal across the levels, and aligning on approaches, decision-making, which means alignment and collaboration the whole way down, or across, or however you want to say it. Patrick Lencioni calls this the first team principle, where leaders are responsible to their peers more than they are to their individual or second teams. I've seen quite a few teams, particularly recently, leadership teams that call themselves a team that aren't a team, that are basically arguing with each other and pulling in different directions. There's nods all over the place. See this all the time, actually. So how do you kind of create a team that is aligned? And what that does is it creates real confusion for people kind of just trying to do their work because they don't know who they're supposed to be listening to. So the next thing is to build interdisciplinary teams. So this is teams that have shared responsibility for teams' outcomes and really blur their role boundaries and edges. In order to do that, the first thing you need to do is to remember that disciplines and roles, or even job titles, are not the same thing. So product manager is not the same as product management. Delivery management and delivery manager, etc. We often do lots of bits of different disciplines in our roles. These do overlap, and they do, so it's useful to remember that. There's also different models of team working. When I say interdisciplinary, the reason is you have multidisciplinary, which is kind of separate but interrelated roles. Interdisciplinary, which becomes much more blurred, and teams integrate closer to complete a shared goal. And even transdisciplinary, which is like super blurred boundaries, where people learn, overlap their skills massively. I'm not saying that everyone needs to be completely on the right, but it's useful to think about where you are and where you want to be. I think there's definitely a thing where allowing people to lead on stuff can be helpful for them. So that interdisciplinary model. Excuse me. So you might not have the ability to. So I'm just going to have a little bit of water. Excuse me for just a sec. So you might not have the kind of control or influence in your organisation to change organisational structures or even to put teams together. But if you are on a team, there is ways that you can embrace in-team collaboration and create that shared responsibility towards outcomes. It's really important to remember that we have capabilities outside of our job titles. If you're anything like me, you don't have this traditional career ladder. Does anyone have a traditional career ladder like that? Anyone? It's all mixed up. There's this book, Squiggly Careers, which is Helen Tappert and Sarah Ellis, and they say that actually our careers are a lot more like this. So we all have these different experiences, be them in work, be them outside work, lots of different things that we bring to the table. You might find that somebody who's, I don't know, a data analyst is also really good at design, for example. It's just kind of completely all over the place. So embracing that is really important, and looking outside of, what people's role is on paper and looking for ways to kind of blur those is important. You have this idea, people familiar with T-shaped people? This kind of T-shaped people is, do it without taking the microphone away, is broad generalist and deep specialism. And then you have pie-shaped people, which is broad generalists and some specialisms. We're actually kind of more of comb-shaped or broken comb-shaped, where we have all these kind of different specialisms in different areas. And even two people with the same job title are not interchangeable. We don't have the same background. We have all these different specialisms. So finding ways to understand what they are and find opportunities to contribute and collaborate. So you can do this in your team. You can do an exercise where you try and understand what each other have. You can say things like, what are my superpowers? What am I good at? What can I do with some support? And what am I new to but want to improve? Or I can lead on something, I can do stuff solo, I can collaborate, and I can help with. Doing this in your team, you may find that actually people can collaborate on certain things and help each other out, and you can start to really actively blend those roles. Think about kind of skills liquidity and stuff like that. So I've been through a bunch of anti-patterns. I've been through some of the problems and some of the things that you might be able to do. So identify your collaboration anti-patterns, find those points of friction and call them out. Look for symptoms of imbalanced power and decision-making. Play your part to create a collaborative environment. Promote collective team responsibility, whatever your position or situation at your organisation, and reduce unnecessary silos. Look for ways to break them down, break collaboration anti-patterns. Look for ways to build empathy and understanding between your team, between different teams. And then maybe we can all get along and make great things together. Thank you.